Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session with Jameson and the lovely Neasan Guilfoyle of Jameson Brand Ambassador in Pernod Ricard, USA. My name is Stefi Fletcher. I am a bartender in Bar 1661 here in Dublin, coming to you live the day after Paddy's Day. So it's a little bit slow and quiet here in Dublin at the moment. And so let's get into it. Today, Neasan and I are chatting the history of Irish whiskey and Jameson and the spirit of Jameson as well, and how we can work together to build community spaces in bars, in restaurants, and in our towns as well. We'll look at the history of pub culture in Ireland and the modern day guest experience and tips on curating memorable moments on either side of the bar. So let's get into it. But first, there are 4 things we would ask you for this content to do is please like us on Facebook, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Instagram, and please comment below and ask questions all throughout this session. So, yeah.
The slides up. Oh yeah, here we go. That's the faces I was looking for. So Stefi has introduced herself. I'm the guy on the right, so my name is Neasan. A good way to remember it is Neasan is always messin', but is serious about Jameson and Irish whiskey in general. So if I ever have the pleasure to come to any of your bars, any sessions I ever do, or any trainings, I'm always going to open with that line. So if you want to bet the person beside you, he's going to say something really cringy in the first 10 seconds. You can win yourself a free drink or get a bit of money out of them. But yeah, so I'm from Ireland, and I'm actually from a small town in Ireland called Middleton. So if anybody on the stream here is a fan of Jameson, they might know that Middleton is actually the home of Jameson Irish Whiskey. So my home and my family house are only 200 meters from the distillery. So I've literally been living and breathing the brand for my entire life. I'm 5 years in the Irish whiskey industry, and I joined Jameson in August of 2022. Where I got to travel to India. So I've been able to be a brand ambassador in Ireland, in India, and now my only first couple of weeks in the United States. And I think with the name of this session, creating community on both sides of the bar, our roles as brand ambassadors, for the most part in most countries, they stay the same. Like the bar community and trade advocacy is the paramount pillar of our role. But it's interesting when you travel to different markets, how that role can kind of vary. And when I was in India, a part of my role was actually executing guest shifts or bar takeovers. And this is really interesting for me because as someone who knew about whiskey, who knew about marketing and everything like that, I'd actually never been behind the bar myself. And even though I would have the utmost respect for the bartenders and what they do, it was only after doing a guest shift myself that I really kind of saw how tough it can be. I remember after my first bar takeover, my calves were really, really stiff. Just from leaning over the bar, making drinks on the bar, chatting to people. So I don't know if that says more about my bartending skills or my fitness, but I'll leave that for you to judge. But yeah, so before my first bar takeover, I was chatting to one of my bartender friends in Bangalore in India, where I was based. And I wouldn't have known a strainer from a shaker, or in Ireland, they say your arse from your elbow. So he really kind of gave me good training and kind of put my mind at ease before my first bar takeover. So just kind of shows the community that I had from my friendship with one of the bartenders that he was able to help me and put my own mind at ease before my first session. So yeah, that's kicking off the community aspect of it. And yeah, that is a young Stefi Fletcher there on the left. Yeah, so I look like a distinguished gentleman in my photo, but Stefi looks like she's just had a great St. Patrick's weekend. So we're going to move on now, and Stefi's going to talk a little bit about where she's from Bar 1661.
Excellent. So thank you so much for dragging me and my baby photo, but that's fine. I was dragging myself earlier anyway. I think it's a very suitable photo for a bartender, especially because I have recreated that exact look many, many times over. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me today. We're here to talk about our wonderful bar and community and how whiskey and poaching intertwine with all of that. So we're going to get straight into it. In case you have never heard of Bar 1661 here in Dublin, it's not only the bar that I work in, but it also happens to be my favorite bar in the entire country. I was drinking here for a lot longer than I would like to admit, and I can't believe they actually offered me a job after the stage I've been in inside those two walls. And basically, what we are is staunchly Irish and fiercely independent. And I know that's a weird thing to hear from somebody with such a strong British accent. I am half English, but I'm also half Swiss, so I try to forgive myself for that half of the British. But the point of our staunchly Irish bar is that we are the first bar in Ireland to truly champion poaching as a category. That's what we're all about. We're going to be getting into poaching later. It is very closely intertwined with whiskey. Some people call it whiskey's baby brother. I like to think of it as whiskey's grandfather. And our ethos, and it's literally written on the side of our bar, is we do cocktails, we do whiskey, and we do poaching, because those are the three great drinks that we founded, that this bar was founded on. And so I just included this picture of the back bar because it's one of my favorite things about being an independent bar. We don't really have any brand deals that sort of plague the rest of the bar scene in Dublin and in Ireland. We want to display what we have, what we want, what spirits and brands that we stand behind. And so this photo of the back bar is wildly inconsistent with what you'll find if you actually go into 1661, because our owner and founder Dave Mulligan, he believes in an organic back bar. So it lives and it breathes. So we have loads of different, we've discontinued poachings, we have special casks of whiskey bottles, like limited edition vintage bottles. And so the selection, he says he only wants the bottles at the front of the shelf that are actually being ordered, that are actually going out to people and that people are interested in. So there's no, it's a disaster when you're looking for an obscure whiskey because everything is all over the place. But it's nice because it feels so organic, and it's that kind of sums up what we do in 1661, is that we want to present the community as it is in the moment in a very modern way, and we keep that moving all the time. So yeah, if you want to move on to the next slide, please. So who are we? We are staunchly Irish fiercely independent. We've covered that already. So we opened in 2019. We're coming up to our 5th birthday in April, which is very exciting. Obviously, 2020 was not a great year for anybody in hospitality, but I'm currently sitting in our sister business, which is right next door, which is craft cocktails. So another ingenious idea by our founder, Dave Mulligan, was to start making pre-bottled batched cocktails for the public to buy, because people weren't drinking in bars, but they definitely were drinking at home. So because of the success of this business, we were able to keep funding 1661 and keep it alive, keep the dream going. Dave Mulligan, he tells the story of when he opened the bar and people didn't believe in his vision as being like a poaching-focused bar. Because it is such an unknown spirit and there's a massive stigma around it as well. But he stuck to his guns, and thank God he did, because it's gone off for us. We've absolutely exploded since reopening after the pandemic, which is great. So what do? We do modern Irish hospitality. Neasan is going to have a little bit later about traditional Irish bar culture and pub culture, and how it can be a little bit commercialized. I mean, after everything we saw yesterday from St. Paddy's Day, can be a little bit tacky at times as well. And that's not what we do. We don't play Irish music. We didn't put decorations for Paddy's Day. We just stuck to, we are Irish, and we don't need to prove anything else about that. And our ethos is poaching pays the bills. We say that all the time. It's poaching me, and that's what we're all about. And so we wanted to find a way to bring poaching to the public in a way that wasn't as abrasive as some of the things that people might think about poaching. It's also sometimes called Irish moonshine, and it can be like White Dog or moonshine. It can be a little bit harsh. So that's why we focus on putting it into cocktails and making it really approachable. I'm going to be talking about our signature drink as well, coffee in a little while. And yeah, our big thing is supporting those small Irish brands. We even in our staff meeting last week, we had some terrible news from the distillery's Bay up in Donegal. He is going to stop making poaching because we are the only bar that buys enough of it to keep him in business. But even now, even with us buying pretty much all of his poaching that we can get our hands on, he's made the decision he's going to focus on whiskey and selling barrels to different distilleries production. So we've actually had to rework the new cocktail menu that we've been working on for a good while now, because we can no longer get Moray Bay poaching. So it's very important to us to champion these local and small producers rather than big conglomerates like Diageo, for example. So our back bar is staunchly Irish and fixed independent, just like us. And lastly, what I want to say about us is that we love to spread that poaching gospel. We want to get people excited about poaching. We want to get people really, really excited about poaching. And what is great to do this class with Jameson is that Jameson has actually taken us overseas. Most recently, we were at the Arizona Cocktail Weekend, which was sponsored by Jameson. So they fully believe in our Irish ethos and spreading that to the world as well. So we love to spread that poaching gospel. And then I have one more slide about the bar. This is our motto: is collaboration, community, and cocktails. So collaborating with small bar brands, building a community amongst our location here in Dublin 7, as well as all of Dublin, Ireland, and not just behind the bar, but also in our guests as well. And then obviously cocktails, we always wanted to kind of elevate and do a little bit more than just classics and really work the poaching into that as well. So yeah, that's who we are. That's bar 1661 basically for you.
That was great, Stefi. It's also one of my favorite bars in Ireland. It's that and Cask and Cork are my two go-tos. So yeah, both doing kind of different things, but both contemporary and really, really great. So thanks for that. I'm going to chat a little bit about our history. So it's not 5 years, we're actually 240 years in the making. So I'm going to start with the big man himself, John Jameson, who was born in the year 1740, and he was actually born in Scotland. So the founding father of Jameson Irish Whiskey was actually a Scotsman. And I think that actually kind of ties in nicely to our theme today of kind of community and inclusion, etc. Because myself sitting here, I'm an Irishman in New York. I'm an Irish brand ambassador in New York. Stefi is a Swiss bartender in Ireland. But it just kind of shows that the community that we're part of, it doesn't have any borders. And the way that we have the cultural integration, like that's when the best ideas are shared. When, the Jameson family motto is Sine Metu, which means without fear. So traveling without fear, new frontiers, no borders. And that's what the big man, John Jameson, did. He went from Scotland to Ireland with a mission to make the finest quality Irish whiskey. And in the year 1780, he opened his Bow Street distillery in Dublin. Now, John Jameson was a community man. He used to have great relationships with our farmers, and he used to actually give the seeds to be sown for the barley that was actually made into the whiskey. He also had a nickname as Glorious John because he used to throw lots of parties in different taverns for his workers, for his blacksmiths, for his distillers, and for his barrelmen. So he used to be really down. He used to be down with the people, chatting to them, making sure that everything was good with them. And with this kind of process, by the year 1810, the Bow Street distillery was the biggest distillery in Ireland. We are producing over 1 million gallons or 6.5 million bottles in the 1800s. And at the time, this was the golden era for Irish whiskey making. So Irish whiskey was the second biggest spirit in the world. So it was only behind rum. And Irish whiskey itself, in terms of the whiskey market, actually had 70% market share. So it was bigger than Scotch, it was bigger than vodka, it was bigger than all these different drinks. And on the island of Ireland, there were 88 different distilleries. Okay, so we were the epicenter of whiskey making in the world. But the story of Irish whiskey and the story of Jameson is a story of great success, then some tough times, and now we're looking for the boom times again. But as I said, this Jameson family motto is Sine Metu. So without fear, we've been resilient and perseverant, and we've gone through all these times. But just to touch on these times, they were in the 1900s. And a few key events dramatically reshaped the whiskey market, and a lot of it in favor of Scotch. So these events were, number one, the First World War. This cut us off from a lot of different markets overnight. There was a constant threat of submarines taking down merchant vessels. So it had a big stranglehold on the Irish whiskey industry. Coupled onto this, it was the Irish War for Independence, which was in around the same time. So in 1922, when Ireland gained its independence. Because of this, the British Empire imposed a trade embargo on Ireland and Irish whiskey. So this meant that overnight, we lost some of our biggest markets, like the UK. The United Kingdom was one of Ireland's biggest whiskey markets. We weren't able to export to countries like India or New Zealand or Australia or Canada. And Canada is a very important one when we talk about the third event that really nearly brought Irish whiskey to its knees, which was Prohibition in the United States. So the United States have always been Ireland's biggest whiskey market, and overnight that was shut off as well. We couldn't sell our whiskey there. We couldn't import it. We couldn't do anything with it. So obviously this had a really big effect in terms of the sales of Irish whiskey, but even more so, it had a really big reputational damage to Irish whiskey, because bootleggers were making moonshine in their bathtubs at home. They were colouring it with caramel, and they were slapping a label onto it, and they were calling it Irish whiskey. So if people hadn't tasted it before, it was very, very bad first impression. Scotch didn't have as big same issue, because there were guys called rum runners, and they used to take whiskey from Canada or from Bermuda or the Bahamas. So the American market still had a bit of Scotch, but absolutely no Irish whiskey because of that trade embargo as well. So, as I was saying, during the golden era of Irish whiskey making, there were 88 different distilleries in the Republic of Ireland. But by the year 1966, only 3 remained. And you'd expect, with only 3 remaining, that they'd fight each other for every sale and try to be the last man standing. But they didn't do this. They were a lot more strategic, they were a lot more innovative, and they were a lot more brave. And what they did, they were John Power and Son, John Jameson and Son, and the Cork Distillers Group down in Cork. And they came together to form the Irish Distillers Group. And it's well documented that if they hadn't done this, that the Irish whiskey industry would have fallen to its knees. It might be back in some guise, but it would have been gone at that stage. So they had to choose one of them to kind of be the flagship brand to kind of bring back Irish whiskey. And the brand that they chose was Jameson. So the market and the taste for Irish whiskey was back. And by the year 1976, all production moved from the Bow Street Distillery in Dublin down to a new ultra-modern distillery in Milton. This is for a number of reasons. The streets of Dublin had become very urbanized. They were very narrow. It was tough to get proper access to the raw materials. So we moved down to Milton to our ultra-modern distillery. And Irish Distillers' success was rewarded in 1988 when we merged with Pernod Ricard. The taste for Irish whiskey was back, but what merging with Pernod Ricard did is it gave us an international audience and an international distribution network. So, with Sine Metu, that's our family motto. As I said, it's without fear. This crest was John Jameson's wish to be emboldened on every single bottle. And the ship you can see at the top was actually granted to the Jameson family in the 1500s. So before they started distilling whiskey, because they used to police the northern seas and fight off criminals such as pirates, funnily enough. So without fear, Jameson is now the biggest and best-selling Irish whiskey in the world. Not only that, we're among the top 10 spirits brands by volume globally. And if you're ever behind the bar and you want to tell the story of Jameson, a quick snapshot of it, we say everything you need to know is either on or inside the bottle. On the bottom, you can see John Jameson's name. We've got the year 1780 when the Bow Street Distillery was opened. We've got the family crest again. And one of the really important points to take away from today with Irish whiskey in general is that Jameson is triple distilled. And what we like to say at Jameson is triple distilled to make it twice as smooth. So yeah, that's our very brief 240-year recap into Jameson Irish whiskey. So yeah, we're going to have a small chat now about the Irish bar scene, what it was, what it is, and what we are kind of hoping and what it is becoming with bars like 1661. So I have a couple of images here at the top. The first one is of Temple Bar. And it's kind of what I was envisaging. If someone's never been to Ireland, it's kind of what they might experience or they might envisage the trip might be like. But if you were going to travel to Ireland, I would recommend, if you got on to me, I've got a list of bars that won't be charging you €20 for a pint. But these old Irish bars, they play a really important part in our society. They're part of our culture. It's ingrained in our culture. It's well documented. There's a bar in Westmeath called Sean's. It's been around since the year 900, so it's in the Guinness Book of World Records. And yeah, these bars are a place for community. They're a place to meet your friends, to talk about the week's triumphs, talk about the week's failures, listen to music. Yeah, like basically like a therapy session. So they do hold a really important place in our culture. But I think something we're going to touch on today is while they do hold an important place in our culture, there are new contemporary bars opening. Ireland itself is a very progressive country. And that's why I put kind of the snapshot of Paddy's weekend for the weekend that's in it down the bottom. So if people haven't been to Ireland before, I think the kind of caricature, we kind of call it paddywhackery. It's kind of overextended kind of stereotype of Irish people, wearing the paddy caps, drinking the whole time, that kind of stuff. But as I said, we are a very progressive country. We're actually the first country in history to actually vote in same-sex marriage back in 2015. We're a country that has over $550 million in GDP. We're home to 21 Michelin-starred restaurants, 50 five-star hotels. So I think as a people and as a nation, we've definitely kind of grown and progressed. And yeah, Stefi, I was just wondering, like, is that something that you've experienced since you've been there, your kind of perception of Irish people and the Irish pub scene?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm, as you've said, and as is blatantly obvious, I am a foreigner here. And so I was walking around Temple Bar literally my first week here, thinking, oh my God, this is Irish. This is so authentic. And like, it looks so real, you know, just like everything you've ever seen. But that's the thing. It's paddywhackery that is projected everywhere in popular culture. And actually finding proper pubs and going to your local rather than, you know, going into town to like the really famous big Temple bars. That was a learning curve for me to just actually appreciate that the pub culture as it is supposed to be. Just like you said, it is more about chatting than it is about drinking, which is nice to see. And I don't know if this is just because I've gotten older and wiser. Well, I don't know about wiser, but I no longer go out just to get really drunk and drink loads of pints and see how many I can drink before, you know, I can't stand. It's really about their spaces for community to get together. And I always say it to people when they're paying their bills, like, oh, it looked like you were having a really lovely catch up. And they said, yeah, we haven't seen each other in so long. And so I'm just happy to be working in a venue where we take ourselves quite seriously, but so does our clientele. So the people who come in, they probably range between 25 to, you know, 50 or so. So that's also a little bit more sane than some of the scenes you'll see in the city centre. So that's been a lovely progression for me to just witness, both getting older and then also learning what the bar scene and community here really is about. Because yeah, they are community spaces, and that's why they've been around for so many 100 years, because where do you go to meet up if it's not in a pub? If it's not in your home kind of vibe. And yeah, that misconception that the Irish are always in pubs, so they must be drunks and drinking. I was really happy to learn that that's not actually the truth when I started to really experience the culture.
Yeah, and it's a really, really powerful thing to be able to, you know, bring that sense of community, and especially with new bars like Bar 1661, that it's a new community space, because I don't know if everyone would actually kind of feel at home in a classic Irish bar chatting to the fellas in the top right corner. You know, you might feel like it's a place where you belong, and that's why I think the new bar scene and the new Ireland is really, really important. The next slide I have, I actually only added it this morning. I was reading a Sunday Times article. So this, for people who probably wouldn't know at all, this is Mary McAleese. So she was the second female president in Ireland. The first one was also called Mary, obviously. But she was asked in the Sunday Times what it meant to her to be Irish. So I'm just going to read it out here because I thought it was really cool. So she said, "I love the inalienable fact that I am Irish, formed by Mourne and Lagan, the plains of Boyle and the River Shannon, child of a people who transcended the long centuries of oppression by an imperial neighbour, distilled famine, emigration and grief into a culture of endurance and welcome that made a friend of old enemies, forgave, prospered, grew strong in Europe, respected in the world. A friend to all, especially the poor and oppressed. A people steeped in the poetic, the mystical, the musical, the spiritual, and capable of instant kindness to the stranger and to each other, no matter where in the world. A clever, high-achieving, successful, and decent people at home and abroad. A thoughtful, quirkily, hysterically funny people open to the world and to the future, capable of courageous change and willing to invest deeply and patiently in the healing of history." So I thought that was really good. Obviously, not to get like too serious with it, but I love the instance of being kindness to strangers and that kind of like sense of community. And that's what you can find at the bar, that like a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. and also that we're not harping on the history. So like the history of the bar culture, that we're moving forward as a people. And I think that's really important as well as a nation. So yeah, that's just a bit about being Irish. So I kind of snuck that in there sentimentally, but I thought it was really well said anyway.
Can I just add one thing very quickly? In Switzerland, we're not a very friendly people in general. And so when you go out like to bars and pubs and whatever, you're going not to hang out with other people or talk to other people. You're very much just there for the select group of friends you brought with you. And that was something that I learned when I moved to Ireland, is that people will just chat with you. If you're in a bar, it's so social and everybody is so friendly. And so it cannot be overstated enough how much the Irish just are open and willing to make those new friends. And yeah, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. So
yeah. But yeah, so we're kind of moving from that kind of scene and the old Irish bar culture, which, as I said, it's deeply ingrained in our society. It's a really, really important part of our society. So in no way knocking it at all. But I think obviously because we're on the call with you and Bar 1661, just chatting about new contemporary bars that are popping up in Ireland and what they can add, and the cocktail culture, and maybe even a few words on the menu in Bar 1661, which is so excellent in all Irish spirits.
Oh yeah, well, we have 32 drinks on our menu, which is a lot. And I wasn't working in 1661 when they launched the menu, but they never expected it to be as popular as it has turned out to be. The want for craft Irish cocktails is a lot vaster than they thought it would be. And so now I'm very, very close with our head of drinks preparation. I was talking to her about it, and she said they had to amp up production of really obscure ingredients that they were using for these cocktails. Like we have one that has it's a saffron infused pochine and mezcal stirred down drink, kind of martini-esque almost, but it's got a little bit of, it's just those two spirits with a bit of charred corn cordial. Originally, the person who made this drink had it in an oven. So we have a little like toaster oven downstairs, and that was fine when they opened, but then that drink is very, very popular. And so now it's gotten to a stage, we've broken the oven, and we have to hand char all of the corn. So literally our head of drinks prep will be there with two flame guns, like brulee torches, just be bruleeing charred corn for hours, or maybe like 1 hour. But yeah, people really want it. And an interesting thing about our menu is we realized how popular these craft drinks were going to be because people are interested in Irish spirits, and the notes we get back from our guests every day is, wow, you guys really have put thought into every single aspect of these drinks, because even the garnishes, like we don't buy flowers that are the cheapest flowers to use to garnish three of our cocktails. We specifically go to a flower shop that is only open on really obscure times, because it is the closest flower shop to us, and we love the people who work there. And they're a very sustainable company that uses mostly Irish flowers that are native to the island as well, so they keep up a sustainability practice. And the people, they love it. They can't wait to try more and more of the menu. And people get quite drunk quite quickly because they get very excited. But for the next menu, it's really interesting. We've been gauging what the trends are with our guests, and more people are opting for spirit-free options. And so we're actually going to be expanding our selection. We currently have 2 non-alcoholic cocktails on our current menu of 32 drinks. For our next menu, we're going to expand that up to 4, because people come in and then they have 1 or 2 cocktails and they'll be drinking. It's not as if they're teetotal or, they don't drink. But then afterwards, they'll be wanting something that's spirit-free, but still full of flavor and full of the story and the history and tying into our community and stuff. So I think it's really important what we do with our drinks, because it always comes across as a smash hit, because people are so used to menus. A lot of the menus in Dublin are just twists on classics and overly sweetened or overly sour. And we really take a lot of pride and joy in the balance of our cocktails, and each one being a unique representation of itself. Like we don't do espresso martinis, for example, because our signature cocktail is the Belfast coffee. We don't want to take away a coffee drink. We don't want to add in another coffee drink just because it's widely popular everywhere else. If you want an espresso martini, that's not the reason you're going to 1661. And we get a lot of tourists who read about us as being a cocktail bar that's highly rated. And so they come in and they're like, oh, we'll just start with a porn star and espresso martini. It's like, unfortunately, you won't, because that's not the space that we're creating. And we're trying to move away from that and really do something that is craft and speaks from like the soul of Ireland, rather than just what you can get everywhere else that seems to sell very, very well.
Cool. Yeah, no, and it's great that like you're listening to the community in terms of when you're making your menu, it's with them in mind. Obviously, with the two more spirit-free cocktails, is because you've listened and that's what people want. So that's the kind of community on both sides of the bar that we're looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to move on from that, and I think you're going to talk about poaching for a while.
Oh, dying to talk about poaching. I absolutely love it. So I think Neasan is probably better to teach you how to pronounce it properly, because every time I seem to say it, I get a weird look from Irish people because I don't speak Irish, unfortunately. I say poaching, but how would you say it?
Poaching, yeah. It's the I father, so above the I, it's an I father, so it makes an E sound, so that's why it's poaching.
Poaching, yeah. But I used to call it Polton, like when I first read it, and then people often confuse it with poutine that they get in Canada, so you know, the cheese curds on chips and stuff. But yeah, every day we get asked, what is poaching? And poaching is so beautiful, because once you learn about it, you don't want to drink. I've gotten very disinterested in agave or in rums or gin or vodka, because poaching kind of has a bit of it all. It comes from the Irish word pota, meaning little pot, or just pot in general, because it has very humble beginnings. It is Ireland's native spirit. That's what we like to say in 1661 anyway. It dates back to about the 8th or 11th century, so it predates whiskey by a couple of hundred years. And essentially, poaching goes through a lot of the same life that whiskey goes through. It is mostly made from barley, either malted or unmalted. And a common misconception is that it's made just from potatoes. Potatoes are very difficult to distill with because they're very starchy, and then they can clog up your equipment. And it's not very... It's not very sustainable as a practice to only make stuff from potato. And potatoes were also only introduced to Ireland in the 16th century. And because poaching dates back a lot further than that, it is essentially a barley spirit, an unaged white spirit from Ireland, made in a pot still. So it was outlawed by the British in the year 1661 because it has such informal beginnings. It was literally made in the home. That little pot that it gets its name from was one that most kitchens would have had on their fire. You know, everybody would have had their own little pot still. It was also mainly made by women for their communities and their families, and it is a drink that brings people together. And one of my favorite quotes from Dave Mulligan is, and I don't know if this is his quote or if it comes from somewhere else, but he says that traditionally poaching is for weddings, wakes, funerals, and fairs. I think I have that on a slide in a little bit as well. But yeah, because it is a celebration. It's a celebratory spirit. It brings people together. It warms the bones. It cures all ailments. Traditionally, poaching has an alcohol percentage of 60 to 90, roughly 60% to 90%. Nowadays, with modern poaching, it's a lot lower. So it's usually between 40 and 50, depending on the distillery, depending on the style of poaching as well. And the reason it was made illegal by the British is because they wanted to make more money off of whiskey, because all of the Irish whiskey at the time would have been owned or run or taxed and overseen by the British, because they knew that it was a massive moneymaker, because, as Neasan said earlier, it was the biggest industry for whiskey for a very, very long time. And they weren't making much money off of the Irish, because the Irish were making poaching at home and they were drinking that because that is their native spirit. And when there was a tax introduced on malted barley, and basically the British kept trying to make it more and more difficult for the Irish to make poaching. And this is sort of linked to the entire colonial oppression of Irish culture and its eradication, like forcing the Irish to speak English instead of speaking their native language, which is Irish, or Gaelic, sorry. And in 1661, it was officially made illegal by King Charles II, and it was driven underground. And as you can see on this slide, this is these are poaching hunters, or like the police would be going around and cracking down on people who had stills at home because it was made illegal. And can we do the next slide, please? Excellent. So yeah, this is all about the illegal reputation of poaching and its common misconception and the way that it's still viewed today. So when this law was introduced in 1661, it took a while for the British to perfect how they were going to stamp it out. But then they began this incredibly violent campaign. There's literally been battles over poaching. People have died. People have been killed. And because the British employed 2,500 men to hunt down poaching makers who were mostly small-time farmers and small communities that they would be making poaching to be able to sell to the communities so that they could actually make some money to pay the rent to the British landlords. And so it's just like, it's incredibly cruel, the history that the British have with poaching. And it's such a beautiful spirit as well. And so then that's when the Irish, because they're very clever people as well, from living here, I know that they're very cunning and smart people. They started to make it illicitly and hiding the stills, burying them underground. A common practice was also putting the stills on land boundaries in between two different landowners, so that then the whoever owned it, the ownership of it could be disputed, so they could avoid, getting fined or going to prison or whatever the British wanted to do. In that way, which is really fun. So that's where the name Mountain Dew comes from, because obviously they were hiding it all over, and so they would go up into the mountains, into the woods, and make their poaching there, much like moonshiners in Kentucky as well. They'd be hiding out where people wouldn't be able to see them. And it's funny because a dead giveaway for making poaching is they would burn turf and peat. So you would see the smoke going up into the sky, and so the poaching hunters would know how to come get where to find these stills. And so the Irish would just wait until it was really bad weather and very windy. And so then they would distill their poaching, which, I don't know if you've ever been to Ireland, you don't really need to wait long. So this stigma surrounding the spirit is that it is illegal and it is illicit, and that even Irish people, they come in and they didn't know that the law was repealed in 1997, mostly due to a big push of the Bunratty poaching founder, whose name escapes me now, I'm very sorry. And they come in and you say, oh, we're a poaching bar, because I always ask, have you been with us before? Because people just think we're a cocktail bar, and we're a poaching bar first and foremost. That is what we've built our entire castle on, if you will. And they go, oh, poaching, ugh. And oh no, that's going to knock my socks off. I literally had 3 people from Tipperary in yesterday for Paddy's Day, and same spiel, poaching bar, and they go, oh, and they call it potteen. So that caught me off guard. They were calling it potteen in their very, very adorable Tipperary accents. But yeah, then they were saying, oh, so we're going to get absolutely shit-faced here. Oh, sorry, excuse the language. And I said, no, you're not. They're very, very reasonable. It's all federally regulated at this stage. But the Irish, as far as I know, I didn't grow up here, so maybe Neasan can speak more to this, but poaching is known as something that your neighbor or somebody in your community was making in a shed and putting in plastic bottles, and then you would steal that from the cupboard when you were like a teenager and go and drink it in a field, and it usually wouldn't be very nice, and it would usually be very strong. And so then people have that in their minds as poaching instead of what it is now, which is a sophisticated spirit and category that we are trying to champion the revival of. So yeah, have you had an experience like that at all, Neasan?
I can't confirm or deny because this is recorded and live, but yeah, like it sounds like a typically Irish experience, so I can give a wink to that. But yeah, my granddad in Tipperary would have known some poaching makers and stuff like that, so it definitely is a really big part of our culture. And I think if you chat to anyone from Ireland, they would know, or their granddad would have a friend who would have made poaching in their shed or something like that. So yeah, it's a really cool story.
Yeah, perfect. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay. So we're getting on to where we are today, and the very handsome man in this slide is Mr. Dave Mulligan himself. I, having worked with Dave and gone to poaching masterclass by him and hearing the way that he speaks about poaching as a category, it is incredibly inspiring, and I think he is one of the reasons that poaching is becoming more and more mainstream. That's always been like his kind of mission since he decided that's what he wanted to do with his career. He was given a bottle of poaching by his dad in London when he opened up his first bar, because it is a celebratory spirit. And he tried it and he was like, why aren't more people talking about this. This is actually delicious. Thank God he got a good one. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today with Bar 1661. So poaching was legalized again in 1997. Great year. That's the year I was born. So I always love telling that story because two great things happened in 97. I was born and poaching was legalized again. And you can see here, this is our golden moment cocktail on the menu, because each of our drinks in 1661, we try and tell the history and the story of poaching and distillation on the island. Not just poaching, also whiskey. And we have like a drink dedicated to Hennessy as well, because he was originally Irish, for example. But yeah, this one is the drink that's inspired by the year 1997, which is called the Golden Moment, because it was a beautiful year for poaching. And it's actually a poaching, grapefruit and soda bread sorbet with a bit of apple ice wine in the middle, and then surrounded by champagne, topped with a little bit of popping candy. So it's very effervescent, it's very celebratory, it's a beautiful cocktail. I really, really enjoy it. And the problems that we often run into today, and trying to revive poaching as a popular spirit, is that stigma that I've been talking about. But the best way to fight a stigma, put it in tasty cocktails. And so we always give all of our guests a little welcome drink when they arrive, just to cleanse their palates, reset them, get them ready for the experience they're going to have in 1661. And our welcome drink is literally their first introduction to poaching, because it's usually a clarified milk punch. We also do like a poaching Negroni sometimes. Yesterday we had a bright green sour with some poaching in it, because it was Paddy's Day. But yeah, always that. And I'll put down welcome drinks for people, which is supposed to be something really nice. And then as soon as I say, oh, it's got Bon poaching in it, which is our house poaching, which I'm going to talk about in a second, people just like ruffle their noses sometimes, like, oh no, I'm not drinking poaching. Oh no, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, well, you're in a poaching bar, so you will be drinking poaching. It just depends on how long it takes you to get there. And then people will try it and they say, that's absolutely delicious. And then they realize, oh, you can actually do something different with poaching. So on this slide as well, you can see 2 Belfast coffees, which is our signature house drink in 1661. If you're coming to visit our bar, you have to get a Belfast coffee, because it is our heart and soul as a venue in a glass. It is a twist on an Irish coffee. Well, it's inspired partially by the Irish coffee, but it is made with cold brew instead of hot coffee, and it's made with poaching instead of whiskey. And I always tell our guests, the perfect way to ruin every Irish coffee you'll ever have for the rest of your life is to try one Belfast, because I personally think, and so does the general public as far as I can tell, poaching pairs better with coffee than whiskey does. So I'm very sorry, Neasan. I know this is a Jameson talk that we're holding, and Jameson Irish coffees are delicious as well. But the Belfast is the epitome of what we do in 1661. And it was created about 10 years ago or so. And the reason it was created is because poaching needed a signature cocktail. Like you have tequila has the margarita, rum has the daiquiri, gin has the martini. What could poaching have? And apparently Dave Mulligan and some of his mates in London went through a lot of different variations of what to do, but it needed to be a drink that is easily recreatable in pretty much anywhere in the world, as long as you have a bottle of poaching. So it is, it's 2 parts cold brew coffee, 1 part poaching, half a part Demerara sugar syrup, and then it's topped with hand whipped double cream, and then a little bit of grated nutmeg as well. And yeah, when people come in and they say, what should I try? What's the best poaching cocktail to start with? Always a Belfast coffee, always. And Dave Mulligan's been making them for 10 years. I've only been making them for about 9 months. But he said in 10 years, there's only ever been one person who said, that's not for me. So, you know, it's absolutely delicious. I will probably be going in to have one afterwards as well to celebrate this little chat that we're having today. So, yeah.
Very interesting stuff. Just apart from the Belfast, what would be your favorite Jameson cocktail do you have on the menu? You have a few. Is there the
does it have to be Jameson, or can it be Middleton Distillery? Because I have 2 different answers.
It could be Middleton Distillery, yeah. We're the same. We're the same family.
Cool. We have one cocktail called the Gibney, and it's Redbreast 12 pot still, and then it's got a little bit of black cardamom, aromatized wine, pineapple, and just a little drop of rum as well. And it's stirred down, it's served up in a little pony glass, and we put malted barley extract on the side, because it is inspired by the year that the British put another tax on malted barley. And so in our menu, we make a cheeky little joke. Oh, it was also the year that coincidentally the Irish started putting unmalted barley into their whiskey, thus creating the iconic Irish pot still style. And we wanted to use our favorite pot still, like Gun Redbreast 12. It's the most expensive drink for us to make on the menu, but it is so worth it. It is absolutely delicious. And the malted barley extract on the side, it not only is a little nudge towards the drink's history and malted barley being taxed, but it is also symbolizes the fact that that's a barrel-aged cocktail. So we put it in an ex-Oloroso sherry cask for up to 3 months so that it gets a few of those sherry flavors in there. It pairs in beautifully with the black cardamom and the pineapple and the whiskey. And there was also a time in whiskey making history when not everybody could read or write. So instead of writing exact distillation dates on the sides of barrels, they used to just use different colored paints. So if you're hopefully everyone here in attendance will be familiar with the spot whiskies, also Middleton, yellow spot, green spot, blue spot. That's also where your branding comes from for that as well. So yeah, it's just like the drink is not only banging, it's also aged in a barrel, and the garnish takes about 5 minutes to explain, but I explain it to every single guest because I just think it's so cool. So yeah, that would be my favorite, apart from the Belfast coffee.
I love that wink. That really embodies your staunchly Irish and fiercely independent kind of motto, having the kind of malted barley inside as a wink to all that history and stuff. So that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about pot still whiskey, that's kind of brought me on nicely into how we produce our Jameson Irish Whiskey. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Jameson is a blended whiskey, but I'm going to kind of focus in on pot still whiskey today because it's the quintessential way of making Irish whiskey. So to make whiskey, we need 3 things. We need water. And as I said earlier, our production process moved from Dublin Bow Street to Milton in 1976. We've got a great water source in Milton. So we have the Dungorny River, which runs right through the distillery. So it gives us a really great, clear water source for our whiskey. The second thing, we need yeast, and we're going to need yeast later in the process to turn our sugary liquid wort into alcohol. And the third thing we need is, well, we don't need me. Unfortunately, I am dispensable. Hopefully I can boss in the wash on this. But what we do need is the guy I'm holding in my hand. What I'm holding in my hand is 2-row barley. And that picture is actually taken only 10 kilometers from our distillery. So as I was saying earlier in the story of Jameson, John Jameson himself had really great connections with the local farming community, so much so he was even giving the seeds of the barley to be sown in the fields. We continue that tradition today. We're really, really close with our farming partners. And in the spirit of being sustainable, we actually partake in our green barley scheme, where we actually pay over the market rate for our barley. But we do this to ensure that the methods of making the barley and harvesting are all sustainable. So that's a little nod to our sustainability in like our community with our farmers and everything like that. So those are our ingredients for making our whiskey. So a very brief overview of our production process. So we have our ingredients. We're going to mill them into grist, and we're going to mash by adding hot water in a mash tun. It's not alcohol yet. That's going to happen in fermentation. When we add our yeast, it's going to eat up all those sugars and create lovely alcohol. But it's only going to be around 10% alcohol by volume at this stage. Now we're going to distill. And a really important part with Jameson and a lot of Irish whiskies in general is we triple distill. I'm going to harp back to it again. Triple distilled, twice as smooth. So after 3 distillations, it's still not Irish whiskey yet. It has to mature for no less than 3 years on the island of Ireland. We mature our Jameson in a combination of American bourbon barrels and Spanish sherry butts. And then it's time for blending and bottling. So as I said today, I'm going to talk a little bit about pot still whiskey. And Stefi was touching on it in poaching manufacturing. But pot still whiskey is the quintessential way of making Irish whiskey. And it's how it will differ from Scotches or American bourbons or Japanese whiskey, etc. So yeah, typical way of making Irish whiskey. And as the name would suggest, they're distilled in massive copper pot stills with a kind of onion in shape. They're handmade stills. And what the copper does is it extracts unwanted compounds such as sulfur, okay? And it's going to give you a really nice, silky and spicy taste. And for pot still whiskey, we have a particular mash bill. So as Stefi was mentioning earlier, the English or the British put a tax on malted barley. So the Irish, fiercely independent, rebellious and innovative, they thought, let's not have 100% malted barley in our mash bill. Let's add some unmalted barley, or barley in its raw form, and see what that does. And what it did, number one, is they didn't have to pay as much tax, so more money, always a good thing. But a really great byproduct of this innovation was they found that that unmalted barley have a very nice silky kind of feel on the palate. Also added some nice spiciness and some fruity notes. So it was such a good byproduct that we kept it in, and that is our mash bill for Irish pot still whiskey still today. But as I said, we're going to distill our whiskey 3 times. And if you didn't already know, this is where we're really going to differ from typical Scotch whiskey, which would typically be distilled 2 times, or American bourbon, which would typically be distilled 1 time. John Jameson himself had kind of messed around and kind of like experimented with distilling 4 times, but 3 times was the charm. Really, really smooth, still really, really flavorful. I think that's the big thing about Jameson. It's a very approachable whiskey. It's a really great whiskey to get into the Irish whiskey category because it's not harsh. It's very, very approachable. And that comes from our triple distillation. So to say it again, triple distilled, twice as smooth. So after we distilled 3 times, it's not going to be Irish whiskey yet, as I said. It's actually going to be a clear liquid. So it's going to look like vodka. And a really, really important part of Irish whiskey production is our maturation, okay? So Jameson is going to stay in a little longer than 3 years, but we're going to keep it in Spanish sherry butts and American bourbon barrels. Your American bourbon barrels are going to add notes such as vanilla and toasted wood, and your Spanish sherry butts are going to add fruity notes, nutty, kind of Christmas cake. So at any one time in Middleton, we have over 2 million casks maturing. So a lot of whiskey. And you would hope that all of this whiskey would turn into Jameson, that we're able to sell it all over the world. But unfortunately, we've got pesky angels, and the angels share. We lose about 2% of our volume in each barrel to evaporation every year. So could you give a guess, Stefi, how many bottles we lose every single day to the angels?
Oh God, I knew this at one stage.
They had a big pack this weekend anyway. If they kept the form,
isn't it like 78 barrels or something?
So it's 50,000 bottles a day. So over St. Patrick's weekend, and because it's a bank holiday in Ireland, they'll have over 150,000 bottles drunk between them over the weekend. So a lot of evaporation. It's all the more kind of crazy when you put into context that our distillery and our warehouse in Middleton is in Cork, so very, very temperate climate, and we're still losing 2%, 50,000 bottles a day, strictly through evaporation. So yeah, they're having a big party up there at our expense. So yeah, that's just a little bit about pot still whiskey, about our production process, our maturation. And now we're going to chat a little bit about creating community on both sides of the bar. So I put in this picture because as a brand ambassador, I'll come into an account like Bar 1661, and this is the kind of reception I think I'm going to receive, that you're all delighted to see me, that, oh, he's finally here. But obviously not the case. You've got brand ambassadors coming in the whole time. You've got sales reps coming in. So, you know, there's nothing too special about me coming in. But yeah, I think I was like, just to kick off the conversation, I was thinking like, what could someone like me as a brand ambassador do to add value to a bartender's day? Like, obviously we do product trainings, we do all that kind of stuff, but that's very kind of like face value stuff. Like what would you suggest as a bartender that like a brand ambassador come in and it could actually add a bit of value to your day?
So for me personally, I really like events that are put on by different brands. I mean, it sounds really silly, but it's always lovely to get an invitation, like a nice little printed out thing. And it's like, oh, we're inviting you. And I think a big thing for me is it's a really hard job that we do behind the bar. It's long hours. Sometimes it's unsocial or antisocial guests that we get at the bar. We deal with a lot. We deal with so much that it's nice when you go to these events and, you know, there's free drinks and then there's free food, and the food is actually really nice. And you just feel really looked after and you feel seen and you kind of feel a little bit pampered, which is not something that you necessarily associate with bartending as a job. So I like those. And also I think events foster community. Like I wouldn't be as interwoven into the network of Dublin's bartending community if I didn't go to events put on by brands, because they've literally created a community space of all like-minded people, and you're all in a good mood because you're all being pampered. And so it doesn't have to be a competition necessarily. It can just be a nice day out for bartenders, or a nice evening for them as well.
Yeah, so if that elephant comes in with a nice invitation instead of just trying to get a drink in his trunk, yeah, that's a good way to add to the community.
Everyone loves an invitation. I mean,
everyone loves an invitation. But we'll move on to one of your slides. Oh, that's just the bar counter again. And one of the events that maybe you're talking about that you were invited to by Jameson would have been the All Together Now Festival.
Yeah, I love it. I go every year with Jameson. This year, when I go, it's going to be my 4th year going. And I've worked my way up through the different years. I went from being like a bar back my first year. That was rough because it rained, and All Together Now is on a very hilly terrain. So I was covered in mud by the end of the weekend, but it was so much fun. I went back, and then I was a bartender. And then last year I got to help somebody who's worked with me at every single festival as well, Keelan. He's the general manager in a restaurant just around the corner from 1661, one of my very close friends, who I visit far more often than I should, because he works in it's a New Orleans style fried chicken restaurant. So it's not necessarily good for my cholesterol levels, but I love him so much that I will eat the chicken tenders as much as I need to see him. But yeah, I got to help him. He was the manager of the Jameson tent last year, and then I got to be his assistant manager and help just run the show behind the bar as well. So it made me feel really accomplished as a bartender, and Jameson always looks after us really well. We get loads of really cool merch. I mean, that's another thing that I would say about brand ambassadors. Everybody loves presents.
Yeah.
Very much. People love it. And also I look very nice in green. So I love that. I included these photos because the security guard, he was a security guard 2 years in a row. His name is Nicky. And he specifically told me last year when I saw him again, because I was like, working a festival, and he doesn't have Instagram, he doesn't have Facebook. I never thought I'd see him again. He just remained as like a legend in my mind. And then I saw him again, and looked like you could see how delighted I am to see him. I don't know if he's as delighted to see me.
He's got a smirk.
Yeah, he literally said, I specifically requested to work in the Jameson tent because it was the best tent last year, and the music is always really good in the Jameson tent. Everybody loves Jameson, so people are always in a good mood coming in. And yeah, we were also very good shelter from the rain. That happened again last year. And on the other side, that is my very good friend, Adelina Valdivia, a legendary cocktail maker here in Dublin. She's from Bolivia originally. But yeah, getting to bring her along. She's a very precise, professional, strict bartender when she's working. And I said to her, I was like, I think it would be really good for you to come and work in the festival because it's completely different. You have to let go of a lot of things. You have no running water behind the bar. You're rinsing out your jiggers in buckets of water that you have to keep changing. And she said, I love this experience because it helped me loosen up a little bit as a bartender. And so it's really nice because I knew her from events and working together in Dublin. Then I got to bring her along. And yeah, like I said, we were just really looked after by Jameson as well, and had a great time. And I mean, Black Barrel cocktails, you can't really go wrong. Everyone was happy.
Oh yeah, Black Barrel would be my favorite. Yeah, very alcohol forward. It's great in you ever tried a maple old fashioned?
Oh no, not with Black Barrel anyway.
Yeah, could be one for you to give a go. But yeah, no, it's really great hearing that stuff. Obviously, working for Jameson, I would have been in India at the time, but I know my friends who are brand ambassadors in Ireland, like All Together Now is like their biggest one of the year. So obviously being one of the bartenders at that, like obviously hold you in such high regard and like having you there, and like it sounded like a really, really great time. So it's great hearing stories like that, especially working for your band. It just makes you proud because you're like, it is fostering that sense of community and going back every year. So yeah, no, it's nice, like little story.
Yeah, there was one year when I was a bartender, and there was some people who are a bit more bonkers than I am, some bartenders, but they were literally getting up onto the bar and dancing to the music because it was so good. And it's just a real fun party vibes in the Jameson tent always. And it feels like you're actually at the festival rather than working it. because you can see the main stage. You don't hear the acts because the music is so loud in the tent, but you see all the people moving around and like you're close to all the food. And it's just a really fun place to work. And I've met, like I said, Keelan, I've known for years there. I've worked with some of my other really close friends all together now. And so we look forward to it. It's like, it's hard work. It's 16-hour days nearly some of the days. But it's fun all the time and you're there with all your mates. And I'm actually just getting excited thinking about going back this year as well. So
yeah. But that is like our motto at Jameson. It's we're the serious whiskey that doesn't take itself too seriously. So when you're a bartender with Jameson, obviously it's important to make the drinks and make them like up to the standard. But at the same time, we're selling whiskey. We're not saving lives. So it's a good time to have fun, kind of lean back and actually enjoy the festival and the time where you're kind of like you're meeting the public as well. So yeah, it's like a nice sense of community.
Exactly.
But I think we're nearly about at our hour. So I was wondering if anyone has any questions in the comments, they can obviously let us know, or our Instagrams are going to be thrown up at the end. So if you have any questions at all on Jameson in general, or Pochine, or Bar 1661, my DMs are always open anyway. So open invite for anyone to reach out and connect. Good.
All right, I just needed to add one more thing before I finish up and we wrap this video. I forgot to mention, and I only remembered when you were talking about the aging of Irish whiskey, Pochine is an unaged Irish spirit, but it can be aged up to 10 weeks. So it's funny because people ask, well, what happens after 10 weeks? And I say, well, between 10 weeks and 3 years is this weird purgatory limbo state where the liquid doesn't really know what it is or what it's doing because it's not pochine and it's not whiskey. But yeah, we have some really interesting rested pochines because it's like they don't even call them aged because it's just 10 weeks. And so they just go for a little rest in the barrels. It's adorable. I love that. I love that about pochine. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in. Sorry for forgetting. I get a bit carried away every now and again. Oh, you got a little question there.
On the Jameson Horizon. Well, if there is, I'm not too sure about it yet. Well, I'm the new thing on the Jameson Horizon here in the United States, so hopefully I get to meet some of you guys on my travels. So yeah, I'm the new kid on the block. That's the only thing I know of at the moment on the Jameson Horizon. So I hope I'm enough for you at the moment. But yeah.
I'm hoping something new on the Jameson Horizon could be those Letterman jackets coming to Europe.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, with that, we had a big activation on St. Patrick's Eve. So we did St. Patrick's Eve because it was a Saturday. So we had a big party in Times Square and I got one of these and I was stopped by literally 20, 30 people walking back towards the hotel, like asking where I can get them. But I think you can buy them online. If you go to the @Jameson US Instagram page, I think that they're available to buy there. I don't know how many they are, so yeah, maybe go quick because they are really they're really warm though. I am sweating here, but I had to rep something Jameson, so yeah, they're cool.
I got an amazing, literally the best rain jacket of my adult life. I got it at Altogether Now. So that was one of the other things that Jameson did for us is they provided us with rain jackets, which that was only on year 3 that they gave us rain jackets, but they obviously listened because I complained the year of the torrential rain. I was like, are there no rain jackets anywhere? I mean, I should have brought one, but yeah, Jameson hooked us up with these really sweet rain jackets that were so warm as well. So you didn't even need a jumper underneath it. You just wear the rain jacket. So you guys are killing it with the jacket game, I have to say.
Well, Ireland's rain, death, and taxes, like they're the 3 guarantees in Ireland, and you're not gonna get away from the rain at any Irish festival. It's always gonna be a washout.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
okay, well, if there's no other questions, we might wrap it up because we have gone a little bit over time. So if you enjoyed this class, please hit the like or love button and show some love in the comments on whatever platform you're watching this. And if you want to see more Portland Cocktail Week classes like this one, follow Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook or on YouTube as well. And we're also at PDXCW and at Lush Life Production on Instagram. So you can find out what's coming up next there. So you can find Neasan at neasan.jameson. I couldn't spell Neasan before I saw his email handle, so we've got that up for you there. And then as well as obviously Jameson US and Jameson hosts as well. And then if you need me, my Instagram handle is @whatwereyouexpecting, because I've had the same one since I was 14 and I was a smart ass then and I'm a smart ass now. So that's fun. But yeah, just DM us, keep the conversation going. Like Neasan said, any questions about Jameson, Pochine, Irish whiskey, Bar 1661, those cool jackets, just reach out, feel free. And yeah, and then you can tune in next week as we wrap up our Irish spirits programming with Jessie Lorraine and Slane Triple Cask Whiskey, which is made pretty close to home, just up in Slane Castle. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for being an incredible host, Neasan, as well. You were fabulous. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Yeah, have a great evening.
Have a good one. Chat to you soon.
Absolutely.
Bye.